you know, you have developed all this beautiful dissection. It takes a lot, because I've been dissecting with you, and obviously I'm not you. I know what you said to me. Don't ever say it if you take those pictures that I did it, because I leave a lot of hair. It was not that clean. So Mike was pretty upset that I still hadn't picked up all the air out of the, you know, the cadaver leg. But Mike, I mean, I worked with you, and I know the amount of detail. That I'm not a person that dissect as a profession, and but when you do it to that level, it takes a lot of time, attention. It's not just even doing trimming and so, to the sole plane. It's just the general taking pictures and taking data. I think that's what people fail to understand, the amount of time it takes to have a really good dissection. And I think you've done an amazing job paying attention to details, and it's incredible.
I usually spend for one leg, if I'm doing a couple of my studies, it generally takes me 4 days to dissect one leg.
Right.
To go take my time and go through it. And a lot of the things that I've learned are based on, they're observational studies, but they're based on a lot of numbers. And then you see patterns after a while. When I first started dissecting, I didn't know what I was looking at. You know, you can look at a textbook and learn the names of everything, but what's it mean? You know, to me, I needed to know more. So when I just, all of a sudden, these patterns, and uniform sole thickness is a pattern that developed. Like in the heels, trimming the heels, I noticed one time that my trim always came out to the same spot in the heel.
Right.
And it's what I refer to as the frog wall junction. And that's where the frog separates. Wherever tissue separates it, you will usually align with the moisture line.
Right.
And so that's a pretty consistent guide. And I just studied that. But I didn't trim horses to the sole plane because that's not how I was taught.
Right.
Most of my instruction was on how to do the iron work, you know, how to heat a shoe, how to make a bar shoe. And I've never found bar shoes to be very beneficial.
Well, I think people fail, and still do fail, to understand the importance of trimming. I mean, you have the designer trim out there in the world, but I think every foot is very unique, you know, and you can't just have formula for every single horse, you know, which is really dangerous. But going back to you know, what you're doing, I think it's really important, because a lot of people. How many years have you been dissecting? And
it's going on 60 years
now.
I
know. But I think
when
because I know you're long enough, I think you're I've seen the phases, and I think the past 20 years you've honed it to.
Oh yeah, well I had to, because now, see, I never did this to go out and do lectures. I did it for my own knowledge.
Right. Right.
So that's why I did it all, is so I could improve my knowledge and help horses. And then a friend of mine many years ago asked me to give a talk at mid-year meeting for Western States Farriers. And I used the very first time PowerPoint 3.0. The university just got it.
Right.
And I made a very simple lecture about wall distortion.
Right.
And I put it all into PowerPoint. And all of a sudden, I was an expert because I think PowerPoint was so new to everybody. It was just fascinating. And that's when I started having to do lectures. But again, I didn't do this to be out telling people what to do.
Right. I think it's the better way. You know, unfortunately, people like to be told what to do. And I prefer people that can get ideas and think for themselves and are good at solving problem, rather than following a, you know, formula.
That's a good point, because when someone tells you how to shoe a horse, then you pretty much shoe every foot the same way.
Right.
And that's what's wrong, because we have to learn, if we're going to be podiatrists or in the field of podiatry, we have to be able to recognize what it is we're looking at and treat it independently. Every foot, I guarantee you, I've dissected a lot of feet, and I don't think I've ever found a foot that didn't have a problem.
Well, I think first of all, loading issue happen very fast with horses. They're not raised in an environment that, you know, are always good for horses. And as of late, we're breeding really bad horses. You know, you had, when I interviewed you and Gene Armstrong, you know, both of you were saying when you grew up, the horses were very different because they were working animals.
Exactly.
That now people have, you know, horses are for only one purpose. They're bred for one purpose. They got very expensive. And they're not necessarily genetically really sound because they don't have to really work for a living. You know, I mean, they do things, but it's not the same. So I think it's hard to keep feet under control, you know, because we're not having quality horses. I mean, more reasonable horses, you know. It's like they're designer horses, you know. So I think it's difficult. But going back to dissection, I mean, how many legs do you think you have dissected?
If I said the number, no one would believe it.
I want to hear it. I know how many, but I just want people
okay, well,
to give us a number.
Let's see how many students that would be. 16 times 5.